One of the saddest and most talked about maritime catastrophes in history was the sinking of the RMS Titanic on April 15th, 1912. Large, opulent, and billed as unsinkable, the Titanic's disastrous first voyage ended in disaster when it struck an iceberg in the North Atlantic. Notwithstanding its sophisticated architecture, the ship was ill-equipped to handle the aftermath of the collision, which resulted in numerous serious errors, a shortage of lifeboats, and a significant death toll. In addition to shocking the globe, the tragedy led to significant changes in marine safety laws, creating a legacy that is still felt today. On the night of April 15th, 1912, one of the most infamous maritime disasters in history occurred in the frigid waters of the North Atlantic. The RMS Titanic, a luxury ocean liner known as the unsinkable ship, hit an iceberg during its maiden voyage from Southampton to New York City. Despite its advanced engineering and reputation, the Titanic was tragically unprepared for the series of events that led to its sinking. The search for the Titanic spotted an iceberg directly in the ship's path. Attempts to turn and avoid the collision were too late, and the iceberg scraped along the starboard side, breaking several watertight compartments. Although the damage seemed manageable at first, the ship's design could not withstand flooding in many compartments. Within hours, the mighty Titanic was wrecked. Panic spread as the passengers and crew realized the gravity of the situation. Lifeboats were launched, but there was only room for about half the people on board, leaving countless lives at the mercy of the frozen sea. Women and children were given priority, but many lifeboats were left partially empty due to the chaos and lack of proper evacuation procedures. The Titanic broke up and sank beneath the waves, taking with it over 1,500 lives. Only 700 survivors, rescued by the RMS Carpathia, lived to tell the tale. The tragedy exposed serious flaws in maritime safety regulations, leading to major reforms including the mandatory provision of lifeboats and the establishment of an international ice patrol. Panic, bewilderment, and heroic deeds characterized the last hours of the Titanic, which were a deadly battle against time. This is a minute-by-minute account of the events that transpired on the evening of April 14th, 1912, when the unsinkable ship plummeted into the frigid North Atlantic. At 11:40 p.m., the iceberg is struck by the Titanic. The enormous block of ice is discovered by the ship's lookouts too late to prevent a collision. The ship's hull is torn open in multiple places as the iceberg scrapes along the starboard side. The damage is evident as soon as water starts to pour into the Titanic's watertight compartments. On 11:50 p.m., the ship's officers and Captain Edward Smith are aware of the extent of the devastation. According to their calculations, the Titanic will sink in a matter of hours. The crew grows panicked and starts preparing lifeboats, but it soon becomes clear that they don't have a suitable evacuation plan. The crew starts sending danger signals, but the passengers are not aware of the approaching catastrophe. On 12:05 a.m., lifeboats are sent into the water for the first time. First-class passengers are prioritised, while third-class passengers must fight their way to the lifeboats. Some boats are launched with half of their contents, and there is confusion. As the bow goes farther into the water, the ship's steep angle makes it more difficult for the crew to plan the evacuation. On 12:25 a.m., the Titanic first emits the CQD distress signal before switching to the more recent SOS signal. The call is answered by the nearby RMS Carpathia, but it is some hours distant. Many of the lifeboats are not completely loaded, so many passengers are left behind as they continue to be lowered. On 12:45 a.m., as water enters the lower decks of the Titanic, the angle becomes more acute. The first indications of the ship's impending sinking appear as the stern starts to rise out of the water. The seriousness of the situation is still not widely understood by the passengers. On 1:15 a.m., the last lifeboats are put into service. While some crew members remain to tend to the ship's engines and make sure the final evacuation is as orderly as possible, others stay behind to encourage passengers to board the boats. The uncertainty and fear are increased by the ship's flickering lights. On 1:45 a.m., the stern of the Titanic has grown to such a height that it eventually disintegrates. The two halves of the ship are ripped apart as the front portion falls farther into the sea. Survivors describe the break as a thunderous crack that was deafening. Any debris that remains on the ship is clung to by those who are still inside. On 2:20 a.m., the sea ultimately destroys the Titanic. The ship vanishes beneath the waters as its stern sinks all the way. The icy Atlantic waters claim the lives of more than 1,500 individuals. In lifeboats, about 700 people are left stranded while they wait for assistance. On 2:45 a.m., after arriving on the scene, the RMS Carpathia starts pulling survivors out of the lifeboats. For many, it's too late, but the Carpathia saves the survivors. Later, when the world learned about the Titanic accident, maritime rules and safety regulations were permanently altered. Tragic loss, bravery, and dread characterized the final hours of the Titanic. The catastrophe revealed weaknesses in the ship's construction, safety protocols, and human reaction to such a catastrophic incident. Although the Titanic's sinking is frequently remembered for its tragedy and scope, it is also a tale of human bravery, selflessness, and perseverance in the face of insurmountable circumstances. Numerous acts of bravery were performed by passengers and personnel to help others amid the confusion and panic. Margaret Molly Brown, a wealthy American socialite, was one of the most well-known survivors of the Titanic catastrophe. She earned the nickname, the unsinkable Molly Brown, for her efforts to protect others. Despite the danger to her life, she persuaded the crew to go back to the sinking ship and save more lives after boarding a lifeboat. In the face of tragedy, she left a lasting legacy thanks to her leadership and tenacity. The band from the Titanic performed yet another amazing act of bravery. As the ship sank, the musicians, under the direction of Wallace Hartley, kept playing music to soothe the passengers. Their last song, "Nearer, My God, to Thee," is reported to have been played right before the ship sank, and their bravery in remaining behind while others fled made them a symbol of unselfish devotion. The testimonies of survivors are similarly poignant. Baptist pastor John Harper is known for making the ultimate sacrifice. Harper was observed attempting to rescue lives as the ship sank, even lending a fellow traveller his life jacket. His last moments were spent giving hope to people around him before he died in the frigid waters. While survival appeared very impossible for many third-class passengers, others were able to overcome the odds. A 19-year-old survivor named Edith Haseman was rescued after clinging to a lifeboat despite being cut off from her family. Like many other tales, hers demonstrated the resolve to live against hopelessness. Tragic tale of ambition, human folly, and an unrelenting quest for advancement that ended in disaster, the Titanic tragedy is more than just a historical event. More than a century after its tragic voyage, the Titanic's sinking continues to captivate people worldwide, evoking strong feelings and imparting truths that are still relevant today. Let's recreate the terrible voyage of the Titanic, a tale of lofty aspirations and the harsh reality of its premature demise. The White Star Line constructed the world's biggest and most opulent ship, the Titanic. It was intended to be the height of luxury and comfort, a floating palace that would elegantly carry the rich and powerful across the Atlantic. Because of its size, comforts, and cutting-edge technology, many people thought it was unsinkable. However, the Titanic's magnificence went beyond its scale. It represented the pinnacle of human achievement and served as a reminder of what was possible for humanity, given the correct instruments, means, and drive.